For those of you watching this video, my name is Boink the Clown. I know what you're probably wondering. You're probably wondering why I'm all dressed up. Well, seeing as here in college, I have to do a lot of things for college credits. I'm doing this thing where I'm an actor in a ghost story. Well, that's why I'm dressed up. Okay, so I've been thinking about this a lot. And I even have a list here of 10, the top 10 list. Top 10 list of what? This is what I'm going to tell you. Now, everybody here on the internet is familiar with creepypastas. Creepypastas are essentially internet horror stories that are sort of like urban legends, only they're told throughout the internet. And everyone on the internet has either heard one without them knowing it, or has heard one by reading one. And creepypastas, there's all sorts of them, all over the place. Some including video games, some including other things, some including the internet itself, some including dolls, some including people, some including all sorts of different things. Creepypastas have become very popular and very important to the internet culture. The name creepypasta comes from the creepiness of the stories and the fact that the pasta part comes from copy pasta, which means copy and paste. Okay, I have a list here of the top 10 creepypastas that I like and that for me, after doing a lot of research, I find to be believing to be true. I'm a supernatural, spiritual person. I'm really in tune with it. And there is a lot of things that go on in this world that cannot be explained. And there's a lot of things that are creepy, and based around the creepypastas that I'm given, evidence or not, there is a lot of things that could make these things not only true, but there's a lot of things I've researched that do make it true, at least in my opinion. Number 10. We have number 10 on the list at Abandoned by Disney. The story goes, because it's a lot longer than you'd expect, so I'm going to shorten it. So the story goes, Disney in the Bahamas made this place. So there was two different places. One was Treasure Island, which was a sea world thing. The other one was like the jungle. I'm not for sure what it was really called. But at the center of this jungle-based place in the Bahamas was called Mowgli's Palace. It was based around the Jungle Book. And after a few years, it got abandoned. Both that and Treasure Island. And it is said that some of the animals that they had there were released. Well, there's one person who is a blogger, goes to Mowgli's Palace to see what's going on, because nobody wanted to talk about it. People on the Bahamas didn't like it. Well, when he goes, he ends up finding the whole place in disarray and in ruins. In fact, when he enters Mowgli's Palace, there's a few things that kind of outside him. I mean, it's in ruins, and there's one area where he sees swinging hooks that he even stops, and they keep swinging as soon as they stop. Subtle things. I mean, it's slightly creepy, but not as compared as to when he finds a mascot-only room. As soon as he opens the mascot-only room, which still had a lock on it, it was completely untouched, everything changes. He sees blood, all sorts of different things. He sees mascot heads on tables. He sees a photo-negative Mickey Mouse on the floor costume. It's on the floor and all this stuff. And he's taking pictures and all, and then he decides that he needs some more proof, so he picks up a Donald Duck costume head. And as soon as he does, a human skull falls out of the mask. And then he turns around and he sees the photo-negative Mickey stand up, look at him and say, "You want to see me pull my head off?" And grabs from his neck and completely rips his head off. And chunky yellow blood pours out of his neck. He freaks out, he turns to go running out the door, and as soon as he runs, before he can run out the door, he looks above him on the lintel, or above the door, and it says, "Abandoned by God." And he darts out. Apparently the story goes that the reason why it got abandoned is this guy, dressed in that photo-negative Mickey costume, actually killed the people in the mascot costumes when it was still working. And it is stated that he lives there, and he goes around, and he literally puts on the walls all over the place, abandoned by God or abandoned by Disney in blood. The reason why I believe the story is true is based on the pretenses that it seems plausible. And in fact, there is a Mowgli's palace, and it is in ruins in the Bahamas. It really is. But the thing of it is here's the clincher. If you look it up on Google Maps, right on Google Maps, it's literally blurred out. Everything else you can zoom in and see and all that shit, but when you look up Mowgli's palace and try to zoom in on that, it's still blurred. Kind of creepy, right? Disney doesn't want you to know these things. Number 9. Creepypasta Rap Rat. The basic creepypasta story is simply like this. This kid and his brother wanted to get this game Nightmare, but he was so terrified to play it that his mom had a different solution. So his mom bought him this game called Rap Rat. And it was sort of like one of those kid-friendly games where there was a rat called Rap Rat who plays around and goes looking for cheese and all that stuff. That's the kind of game it was. Although whenever he played it one day, creepy things started happening. He started seeing stuff that really terrified him on the screen, and whenever he was complaining to his mom to turn it off, Rap Rat literally yelled at him and said, "Wait your turn!" As soon as that happened, he started showing him even more creepy images, blah 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 blah, all that stuff. Eventually, they stopped the game, and his mom put it away. When he comes back to his house to get his belongings with his girlfriend, he discovers Rap Rat, the VHS tape that he had recorded. After the recording of this, his girlfriend didn't believe in what he was trying to tell her. So instead, he finds a VHS player from his neighbors, plugs in the tape, and watch the horror unfold. He sees all sorts of things, including one scene where a man is forced to hold a white-hot bowl till his hands are pretty much melting. That's how bad it is. They're like charcoal. Not melting, but they're charcoal. In fact, he hears, like Rap Rat is actually talking to him at this point, but he also hears on his front door scratching and banging. And as soon as they stop the tape and take it out, even though it was really hot, he dropped it. Because it was as hot as the man holding the plate in the video thing was. And he dropped it. And the next day, and after he did the scratching at the door stopped, when he takes the VHS player back, he hears from his neighbor that there was somebody on his knocking on his door. And whenever the police came that night, he had to explain that it was them because he didn't want to explain what was really going on. That terrifies him. He also warns us that he found out the true story as Rap Rat through a merchant who tells him to look up this company that produced Rap Rat, which also produced Nightmare too, the game that he wanted originally. Well, after they produced Rap Rat, they kind of lost the company. Reason for that is a Haitian lady's girl got killed by some defective working equipment, and she cursed him with this Rap Rat doll with a fear demon that anybody who touched it literally would kill him. And if you say the name, I'm not gonna say it for fear of what could possibly happen, but it spells A-P-A-R-A-T. Hopefully that's not as bad as me saying his name. And they found it funny. They found it a joke, and they switched it to Rap Rat. Apparently, these people started dying off. They were afraid to come to work because of shit, and they found this dreaded doll in different places. And our reader warns us not to call his name, not to ask any questions of the demon, yada yada yada. And don't stay up late from 3:30 a.m. to 4 a.m. This is terrifying. Believe it or not, the reason why I believe it is simple. There are demons in this world. I'm not trying to be one of those religious zealots because I'm agnostic. I don't fully believe in everything that the Bible's told. Okay, I'm agnostic. But I know there's demons out there because I have seen them and I've seen ghosts. They're real. Demons are here with us. It's proof we all see demons. demons are here. Whether or not you see them now or later, or if you don't see them at all, demons are with us. And this demon is said to be one of the worst from mythology and all that stuff. So it makes sense as to why all this stuff could happen. And seeing as I believe demons exist, which is why I'm not going to say his name for fear of what could possibly happen. I really don't want to, and I'm not going to. So there's that. Also, it would be best to take this story with a grain of salt. You can read it, and if you don't believe in demons, okay, but I would advise you not to say his name for fear of what could possibly go on. Number 8. The Creepypasta Obsessive Compulsive. Now this is the one that I saw recently, and I listened to it, and I read it, and I thought it was pretty amazing. It's like one of the perfect it's one of the perfect building points to any creepypasta I've ever read. This guy who suffers from OCD, for those of you who don't know what obsessive compulsive disorder is, that's what OCD is. And it's a disorder that makes you do things like putting stuff in order, that you have to constantly do this, or things you have to do things in like a number pattern or rhythm pattern or symmetrical, or fixing in any kind of configuration. You have a problem with that. And this guy, he wakes up every morning at 6:45, and he always walks down the steps, but he always skips the second to last step because he can't do it. He also turns on the radio like he does every day with his iPad, blah blah blah, and he never washes the sides of his car because he can't do it. All that type of stuff, you know what I mean? Well, this day that he wakes up and he checks the iPad for news, something's funny, and he notices this all the way to work, all the way during work, and all the way after work when he's coming home at the light and all that stuff. He feels awful. He feels sick. He doesn't know what's going on. He feels like he forgot something. Well, he goes to bed because he can't deal with this anymore. So he goes to sleep. And when he goes to sleep, he wakes up, same time as always, does the same routine always, checks the iPod for the news, and still feels funny. Like there's something going on. He still feels sick. So when he goes to work, he still feels sick. All the way through work, he still feels sick. When he gets off work and he's driving home, he still feels sick. That is until he gets to an intersection. And he's still feeling this way, and he tries, because it's green, he tries, and this man is out in the middle of the road. And he sees him, and the man sees him. In horror, they both share the horror as he hits the guy and runs him over. And he sees him fly off to one side. This is what the man does. He gets out of the car. He opens the trunk. He tosses the man into the trunk. He takes the man home. He lays out a tarp. He puts the man on the tarp. He picks out some trash bags and some cinder blocks. He cuts the person's body up and the pieces, shoves the pieces into the garbage bag with the 2 cinder blocks, just so that they fit, and tosses them in the river. And he goes to bed. Next day he wakes up, same thing. He checks the iPod for the news, or iPad for the news, and this is what it says: "Hit and run killer strikes again." This is the ending of the story. He's like, this is what happens at the end of the story. It says that, and then it says, this is the last thing it says in that story. After hearing that, this is what he says. He's like, I just started to smile. This story is awkward and creepy, and it has a really good setup, and I love this story because at first you don't know what's going to happen. You just think it's something bad going to happen to this guy. But no, it switches and flips on us. He is the hit and run killer. That's his obsessive compulsive disorder. Going out on a limb, he has to kill somebody every night. Otherwise he'll feel sick, he won't feel at home, and he has to hear about this. He has a disorder with this. That's creepy. The reason why I believe this could be true is there have been known cases of people with OCD that could be violent. It's very rare that an OCD person is very violent. But if you do something and that is your compulsion, then you have a tendency to not feel right if you don't do it. So if his compulsion is to kill somebody by hit and run and then dismemberment, he has to continually do that. Are there no cases of this out there? No, but it's possible. So there we go. And the fact that it's very unsettling, like, it has a really good build-up. You don't know what's going on. And yet, when it hits you, you're so surprised. You don't see it coming. That's why it's a good creepypasta. Let's see if I can find this creepypasta real quick. It's called The Doorbell. And this is actually one of the first creepypastas I actually read. And I enjoyed reading it. It says, "First, before I tell you this, there is something I have to tell you. There is a creature stalking me, so I don't have much time to tell you this. I was sitting at home a week ago, I think, watching the presidential debate with my wife Janice. I was drinking a beer and enjoying myself when the doorbell rang. I looked at my wife Janice, and she looked back at me, and we both knew who had to get it. So I got up and walked to answer the door, but there was no one there. I checked left and I checked right, nothing. I sat back down and I relaxed when it rang again. This time I was getting frustrated, so I waited for it and opened it. Still, no one was there. I ran back to the couch and I sat down trying to get some relaxation when it rang again. This time I was pissed. I ran to the door and I swung it open with force. No one was there, so I decided to check around my house. I found nothing and decided to set up a security camera near my door so I could catch the guy in his tracks. The debate had ended and I missed it. God damn it. I went to sleep. I woke up by, I guess at some point you would know what woke me up. The sound of my doorbell. So I stumbled out of bed, I entered it again, and there was a note in the welcome mat. It said, 'Not even your sleep can save you from me. I'm going to get you no matter what.' At that moment, I heard the sound of my kitchen appliances fall off the hooks. It woke Janice up. 'What's going on?' she moaned. 'It's some ding-dong ditcher trying to get the best of us. Go back to sleep.' I said to her. I slammed the door, locked it, and went back to sleep. The next morning, I woke up and started making bacon. Bacon. This hell, ultimate wake-up call. I was putting the strips on the plate when I heard the doorbell ring again. This time, it didn't sound like a doorbell, but more like the sound of someone dragging their fingernails across a chalkboard. It covered my ears that were in pain, so I ran to the door and I saw it for a split second, a transparent black figure just before it disappeared. I got my toolkit and uninstalled our doorbell in hopes of the ringing to stop, but I was wrong. It rang again and again until I couldn't take it anymore. So I checked the tape from the camera to see who had left a note. What I saw haunts me to this day. It was my wife Janice, except her hands were covered with blood and her eyes were black. No, no, no. This wasn't my wife. This wasn't my Janice. It was something else, I'm sure of it. Then she faded away. She didn't walk away, she just disappeared. I couldn't sleep that night. It was the same screeching over and over again. I tried calling the police to tell them of this disturbance they could deal with it, but the phone had no ringtone. Then a message popped up. It contained a picture, and I was stupid enough to open it, and it showed my house, blood spilling out the windows, and our house was black, even though it was white. Then I saw something in the corner of my room. There it was, a dark, skinny man with glowing red eyes just staring at me, staring into my soul. We had a deep stare down until it slowly got up and opened the door and walked out. That brings us to here, the present day. I hope someone finds this and is alerted about this creature's presence. Wait, I hear something behind me. It sounded like a heavy breathing. Help me. Although all we can get out is help me before the creature gets them. Now granted, I don't usually like stories that have an abrupt end like this. I think they're retarded, I think they're ridiculous. But the story up until that point, it's really good. I don't know what this creature is, and I don't know what it could be. I assume it's a demon, because it's shift-shaping and it screws with this person. And it's a demon that makes you think. And the doorbell is a great setup, because even after he takes the doorbell off, it still rings. It's kind of creepy, right? This demon just likes to fuck with him. Like I said before, demons exist. And if this is what this is, it's possible. There's something out there for this guy. And it's possible that it did find him and did want to kill him. So if that's the point, then it's possible that this man is being hunted down by some evil spirit that just really wants to take it. The reason why I find this so terrifying is because being the first one that I read, it's nostalgia for me. But it's also the fact that there's something vaguely frightening about it. You know, the fact that there's always something watching you. The paranoia sets in at this point and you are completely terrified. You don't know what to do. You try everything to stop it, but it still keeps coming. It's terrifying. It's the most terrifying thing I've ever read in my one of the most terrifying things I've ever read in my life. And the fact that at the last second, whenever he's talking about it, when it gives him a picture and he opens it and he sees it behind him, makes you wonder. Makes you want to check behind you and see what's behind you. Doesn't it? Number 6 is the Watcher, or the other woman, or the other Watcher, or the Keyhole, or so on and so forth, you pick. There's been so many different names about this, it's hard to catch up. So here's the story. This man checks into a hotel, and the woman at the hotel counter gives him his key and said, okay, you're going to be walking past this room, and it gives him the number. And she said, you're not supposed to look through the keyhole in this room ever. He's like, okay. So he goes, he leaves, and he notices the door, he stares for a little bit, but he decides to go to his room and go to sleep. The next night, he comes to his room, but this time curiosity gets the better of him. So he looks through the keyhole. What he sees is a woman in all white in the corner, in the fetal position, staring at a wall. Then all of a sudden, she juts her head towards his location, and he jumps back, gets his head from the keyhole, goes straight to his room, and goes to bed. The next night, curiosity gets him again. This time he looks through the keyhole. All he sees is nothing but red. He's like, well, maybe they covered the keyhole because they saw me peeping and they didn't want me to peep on them anymore or something, you know? So the next day, he goes to talk to the hotel clerk. And the hotel clerk asks him if he checked in the keyhole. He admits that he did. She sighs and tells him the true story. She said that a woman and her husband rented that room 1 year. The husband killed his wife in that room. It was very bloody. It was very gory. It was very horrible. People even stayed in that room and felt a horrible presence, and they hated it. They said that the woman and the man were nothing but pale white, except for one part. Their eyes were bloodshot red. Doesn't that give you the tingles? Yeah, it's kind of creepy, right? Plausible reasoning? It's a ghost. Ghost that doesn't like to be fucked with. Which is probably why she's staring at you through the keyhole. Curiosity is the best thing that we have as humans. We all are curious. We all want to know what's behind something that we're told not to look at. Or we're told not to look at something, or we're told not to do something. Curiosity gets the better of us, and what do? We do it. At least some of us. Some of us have enough sense to not do certain things. But hey, to each his own, and to hell, we all make mistakes. This man, unfortunately, opened a Pandora's box. And that we're not for sure what happens afterwards, or what happened to the man. But we do know that whatever it is, it's not something that you should be tampering with. Because it is a coherent entity that if he did something else on another night, could have ended him. We don't know, and we're not for sure what happened. After all, the people that stayed in that room felt it was eerie enough as it is and didn't want to be associated with it. Can you blame them? I'd be terrified too. Number 5, Polybius. Now this is a video game-based creepypasta, but it's had a story way back since the 80s, whenever The Simpsons was around. This is said to be an old arcade game released in 1981 that the government worked with Atari to make. People that played this game, and in fact, when it was in arcade areas, it's said to be the most popular arcade game that came out, that was around. People had lines all the way from Polybius to outside the doors. In fact, it was much more popular than the actual popular world arcade game ever, and that's Pac-Man, which came out in 1980. Totally beside the point though. Polybius' story spans a little bit worse. In fact, some of the people that actually did play this game recount having the same symptoms as LSD. They would have nightmares, night terrors. They would have visions. They would have paranoia. They would have all sorts of things. And even some of them committed suicide, killed themselves. Kind of scary. And in fact, some of the people that actually had this arcade cabinet in their store noticed black men coming to that arcade and taking samples of it and taking the stats and all that stuff of who played it and accounts of what all happened and who played it and all that stuff. Which makes you wonder, don't it, that it really was an arcade cabinet that was specially made for the army to train people in becoming crazed fighters for the army. Excuse me. That does make you wonder, don't it? What is this thing and why is it so inspirational? The Simpsons even covered it in the 1980s, way before creepypastas were even invented. This thing has a huge, deep-rooted history. What is Polybius? And if it was real, where is it now? Makes you wonder. Now, arcade games like this are known to exist. I mean, after all, we do have Berserk and Evil Otto, and that has caused gamers to put down their high scores and then die of a heart attack. And that exists. There are arcades of that. If Polybius exists, they probably got all the arcade cabinets destroyed so that nobody else could play the horrible LSD-inducing symptoms from that game. Can't say I blame them. So if it does exist, where is it? And I would like to see if I can find it. If somebody found it, I'd like to see a picture. We don't have proof, but proof is something that we definitely need. The reason why, like I said, the reasons why I believe it's possible is because arcade games like this are known to exist. I mean, from what the gameplay stated, it was sort of like you're shooting at hexagons. It was like Space War, only with like hexagons and different shapes and all that stuff. So it makes you wonder. It sounds like a good game, and it was very popular. If it was real, it was very popular, you know. And then the fact that there's all sorts of things that make you wonder about certain games. Blah, 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 blah. Next up, number 4, Happy Happy. Reasons why I picked this: it's not the greatest creepypasta, but it's not the worst either. Now, there was this show called Happy Happy that aired on Nick Jr. At that time it was called Noggin during the 1990s. And in fact, it was aired on 1999, but it only had like 6 episodes showed. And they did it like 20 minutes long, while each episode was like 11 minutes, you know. Happy Happy was taken off the air because when it started, there was the main character named Happy Happy, who was pretty much an apple, a claymation apple on a rusty stick, who would teach kids about safety and a whole bunch of other things. Now, the episode seemed tame at first. And when I say seemed tame, I mean literally. The episodes seemed to be very coherent in the fact that, well, it's simple. Happy Happy really is trying to help kids. Only problem is, when the later episodes start progressing, kids are being killed. They're being attacked by Happy Happy. They're being murdered by Happy Happy. He takes kids to his van and he murders them. Happy Happy is crazy. You see that later. And he's even predicted shit to happen before it's actually happened. Like, there is an episode called The Towers, where it showed the Twin Towers being hit by the planes. And this was back in 1999, before it even happened. Do I think that it's real? I have my suspicions as to it not being real, but for the most part, shows like this do exist. We have seen shows that show up for a little bit, but they're so, like, people don't understand the severity of what they're being showed until it's too late, and then eventually they get pulled. But I still have my doubts. For the most part, I believe that it exists based on the pretenses that this was supposed to be a kid's show, but the writer, who is later identified as a terrorist named Forensic, who has killed several people with an arsenic bombing and all that shit. who created Happy Happy and murdered one of the main kids on that show, or he claims to have killed. There is terrifying to hear that this stuff happened. I mean, it's sort of like 1999, the Creepypasta 1999, based on the pretenses that that was also a series of shows on a local station that was run by this guy. But a Happy Happy just strikes a chord because this is a kids show on a national network that literally isn't run by anybody else. That's why it's much more terrifying, because this preys on the pretenses that anything in America can be showed, and there's no boundaries as to what anything is possible. There's so much going on with this that it really makes you wonder. But hey, I haven't found anything on it, so I still have my doubts. But I want to believe it's true, because this just shows that, I mean, I don't want it to be true because I don't want kids to die or snake bombings or anything like that. But if it is true, it just shows how fucked up certain people are. And it's things like that that should warn us about certain people and allowing certain things on the internet or on TV or anything like that. Number 3. This one is true. There is proof on the internet. Number 3 is Buried Alive from Pokemon. Buried Alive model was supposed to be the original boss, but it was only in the ROM first version that never got released of Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow. And Buried Alive was supposed to replace Cubone's mother as the final boss of the Lavender Town Tower, the Pokemon Tower. The only way to see this that I heard of is you either use a Game Shark if you've gotten too far, or there's other stipulations. Just look it up. Just look up the video, Buried Alive on Pokemon. I'm sure you'll find it. And you can check in the description for the other stuff. I'll probably link the description for those of you who are curious to the guy. I think his name is 70CJ or CG or something like that. I'll link it in the description if you're interested. And what had happened was, if you go to the top of the tower and you go to one of the graves and you click on it, you wait a little while, and then a text shows up like, "You're here. I've been lonely. You want to join?" And then you enter a battle against Buried Alive. Just a rotting corpse coming from behind the corpse. He's just like, that's what he looks like. He's just like, "I'm coming for you." He has a lot of high level Pokemon. He has a level 90 Monk, a level 90 Gengar, and then he's got two other Pokemon that are the same, but they're like levels 101 and 103 or something like that. And they're both the same Pokemon. A Pokemon that doesn't even exist that I know of until I saw this, which is called White Hand. What the fuck is a White Hand? When you look it up, it's pretty terrifying and it is really creepy. And it also uses Transform and a whole bunch of other things. It's apparently, from what I've gathered, a distorted version of Ditto, a white Ditto, but eventually over time it turns into a White Hand. Creepy, right? Buried Alive, it is stated that we don't know what happens if you beat him, but if you don't beat him, it literally will eat you. The game is over, and your save file is completely erased. With that being the case, seeing this and noticing that it originally was supposed to be in the ROM, it kind of sucks. That would be like a beginner's trap for any gamer. That would be like, that's like the devil at the first level of Ghosts and Goblins. That's a beginner's trap if you were to do that, you know? Because if he has those high levels and you get to fight him so early in the game, that would just be stupid fucked up. You know what I mean? Anyway, totally beside the point. Number 2. Normal porn for normal people. There is a website on the internet called normalpornfornormalpeople.com. Now, if you look up on the internet, you'll see all sorts of screwed up things. There's B on forums. There's the B forum. That's like the really, really bad gross forum, the gore forum, and all this stuff, and like 4chan and all that stuff. 4chan's that thing that nobody on the internet likes to mess with or talk about because there's so much screwed up shit on 4chan. Same thing for some, like the deeper, darker parts of Tumblr. There's a lot of screwed up things on that. I mean, there's a lot of screwed up things on the internet. There's no boundaries on the internet because we don't have a rating system of things we can and cannot show, which is good, but it's also bad because if you stumble on certain things, it warps your brain even more than what you already have warped. But normal porn for normal people, when you check the website, you would see that it says normal porn for normal people, a website based around the eradication of abnormal sexuality. Sounds like a good porn website for those of you who are not into the kinky shit or not into the really out there kind of sexual stuff that they have for certain porns. What it turns out though is it's just a text form for a while. That is, unless you look at some of these text forms that turn them into different videos. Some videos, like one video that I know of, it starts off tame. Some of these videos start off tame. One of the videos is Jimbo.avi, which is a fat, obese mime who does his act. And it's slightly funny, but there's also a point where literally towards the end of the video, he is sobbing, hysterically sobbing, crying his eyes out, and he's balled up in a corner or something like that. And that's the end of the video. Then there's another video, and it keeps getting worse and worse. There's all sorts of different things. And it started off on this forum. That's how the story starts. It slowly progresses to this one video that happens to be useless.avi. Useless.avi is probably the worst one that we have on this whole website. It's a blonde woman tied up to a bed. She can't scream. She's trying. She can't because her mouth is stuck to it. And romance. And it's called useless.avi. And it's this woman who's tied up to a bed. Her mouth is covered with tape, so whenever she screams, she can't really do anything. Then all of a sudden, this man opens the door. Now, before the man opens the door, there's also a man who is in stumps.avi, another video by them, and he's missing his legs, and he's on his hands doing handstand, and he's wearing a goblin mask. That doesn't seem too bad. That is until the man, who's dressed out in all black, opens the door. As soon as he opens the door, that's when things get a lot weirder. He opens the door, but he doesn't come in. Instead, he lets a chimpanzee, which happens to be the animal that's running back and forth from one of the other videos too. He opens the door, lets the chimpanzee in, who's shaved and covered in red. When he does that, he closes the door, and the chimpanzee looks starved. This is an 18-minute video, and for 7 minutes, this chimpanzee attacks and mauls the woman for 7 minutes till she dies. Then that's the end of the video. That is horrifying. For me, I know it's true because I've been on the website. I got curious one day and I decided to check it out. So I typed in normalporn.com or normalpornfornormalpeople.com. And you know what? It exists. Just look it up. Normalpornfornormalpeople.com. If you look it up, you have to have a username and a login and password and all that stuff. And if you do that and you set yourself up, you can go on there. You can see other videos, like supposed videos from like Squid Suicide and other creepypastas and all that stuff. You can see them on there, but you can also see their own videos. The only time though, the only video you can't see, and it's been stated on the forums got deleted. And the people that tried to start a new forum, they got banned. And that forum got deleted as well. He kept asking people, but the people that he originally asked that talked about it before, Never gave him a response back. And anytime they upload this one video, which happens to be useless.avi, it's immediately taken off. Can't really say I blame the people who do that. In fact, not only is it taken off, but other websites taken completely off too. It's horrible. You'll never find that on there because it's immediately taken off. There you go. My number one favorite creepypasta? Probably the one that terrifies me the most. And it's because of the real footage. And that's Ben Drown. Ben Drown is a story based around this guy who's looking for nostalgia, goes and buys a Nintendo 64 at this rummage sale. He also buys several other games with it. And he sees this cartridge. It's like a normal Nintendo 64 cartridge, a gray cartridge, but it doesn't have a sticker on the front. All it says is Majora in red Sharpie, or black Sharpie, you know? And the old man gives it to him for free. He's like, okay, that's a little weird, but he goes ahead. And he plays it. And the thing that starts happening is all sorts of different things. At first, it starts off, okay, he puts it in, does his own game save, and the game save file underneath his just says Ben. The glitch things start happening, and he thinks to get rid of it, I'll get rid of the bin thing. I mean, I don't mean it, but I did it out of respect. When he gets rid of it, that's when it gets really worse. That's when the Skull Kid literally shows up in different places and sets him on fire for trying to attack him or play any songs. He sets himself on fire. This statue, the bin statue, shows up, starts following him, chasing him. The happy mask salesman starts laughing at him. The song of healing is played in reverse. All sorts of fucked up shit. And in fact, some of the stories even go on. The story even goes on to state that it infected his TV, and it affected his laptop, which was also connected to an extension cord that had the TV, so a part of it as well. And he would get Ben talking to him by himself. Ben by himself talking to this guy on Cleverbot and all that other shit. So it gets pretty bad. Eventually, Ben starts talking to him even more, distorting the text in the game, or giving him other texts like, you met with a terrible fate, haven't you? Or, you shouldn't have done that. Or all sorts of different things. And eventually, Ben does subside and does stop. And it goes back to like other things, like the game save files over time would change, and like it would go from like your turn to Ben turn to Ben drown, which gives us the meaning that Ben drown means that Ben, the guy Ben drowned, his soul stuck into the cartridge that he loved most, and all this other stuff. Whenever he subsides, things turn back to normal. His game file that he saved under his name is there, and then Ben's is underneath his as well. He leaves it alone because he doesn't want shit to happen in the game. Goes back to normal. He plays his game, and it's normal. No glitches, no other horrible coincidences, nothing else. It's perfectly fine. This is a terrifying one. It makes me not want to play Majora's Mask anymore because I don't want to be that guy to end up getting that same cartridge because he's put it off somewhere. He got rid of it. He hasn't destroyed it, he just got rid of it. Like he gave it to eBay. Like the guy who did the Godzilla NES creepypasta gave it his way on eBay as well. Creepy. Even more creepy is the fact that there is spirits that do inhabit it, but a benevolent spirit. There's two types of purgatory. There's the one where a malevolent spirit dies and they go to his form of purgatory where he can become a malicious entity and all that stuff. And then there's the one where the benevolent entity goes to for the places that he loves. I believe he's a malicious spirit because he didn't fuck with him, so he goes to the malicious spirit purgatory, but he becomes a poltergeist. But I've never heard of poltergeist taking over games. This one's new. Do I believe it? Hell-heartedly? Hell yeah. I believe it. I've seen my fair share of fucked up shit. I fuck with a Ouija board. I don't recommend it at all. Don't fuck with a Ouija board. And I've never messed with anything else like that. I've seen my fair share of stuff. I'm good. So I believe Ben drowned and all that stuff. Everything's just weird. So there's that. Then there's the fact that there's actual gameplay. There's actual gameplay footage showed of this, and I've seen it, and it terrifies me without playing the game. So I can see where that's coming from. So that's the thing. So there you go. That's my top 10 favorite creepypastas that I believe could exist, or do exist, or all those other things, you know, and other ones that are personally creepy out too. Alright, there you go. Hope you like, subscribe, comment, do whatever. This is Born to Climb signing off. Have a nice night.